people from all over the world who had scientific credentials assembled in Acapulco, Mexico, with Pedro Feliz, who was really the Walter Cronkite of Mexico, to look at the possibility that we were entering into a new age of contact. Some would say now disclosure.
Right. And that's where, your information comes in about what you've studied about the environment. And also, how do you explain the coming disclosure and worldviews?
Well, I think they're here for two reasons. One is that they are anti-nuclear in that sense. And the second is the fact that they see what's going on with the environment. When there was the Ariel School incident, what the kids got out of that was the fact that they have to protect the environment because things are really going on.
Yes. So the Hurtaks have written a chapter in this book, Making Contact, where I give an overview of many levels of contact, and Grant Cameron's in there, Whitley Strieber, who we'll hear from tomorrow. And the Hurtaks have written a very important chapter describing the levels of these beings that we are interacting with. There's the physical beings, there's the ultra celestials, as you call them, and the higher, let's go through the three.
It's the extraterrestrial.
Right, that's physical.
The extra celestial, and these are beings that have maybe incarnated here, but now are kind of spiritual guides and working around, helping people. And then there's the ultra terrestrial, which some equate with the angelic messengers.
Or the avatars of ancient times found in the sutra literatures of India, China, Tibet, etc. What I want to emphasize, though, is your chapter 3 is the smoking gun, because I relate to a major conference that took place in Mexico City in 1979, where I was able to show actual pictures from Mexican authorities of the quote-unquote alien specimens. And I believe this is one of the reasons why there was this pushback years ago, because the specimens are not beautiful people from European origin, but many of them have what we will call insect-like faces and features. And this is quite shocking from the standpoint of sociology and biology.
But some of them do look like us. Actually, if we can show some slides, I know it's not so easy on.
But before you do that, I just want to set it up that the reason the Hurtaks can make these interactions with the phenomena is because of this book that Dr. Hurtak wrote called The Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch, where he had a higher consciousness experience. And when you have an experience, and Desiree was right there as well, when you have a higher experience, your understanding of reality shifts. And that's what we really want to present here today, how to expand the nature of reality so we can start making contact, because if we're locked in this little box, all we see is our little world. When you have an experience that expands your level of consciousness, you can start to see there's a bigger reality out there. And that's what all the speakers today are really going to be covering, how to expand the worldview so we can incorporate a greater experience for the human being. So do we say
I wanted to show this one picture from Keith. The second section shows the symbolism of the Divine Mother, and then the ATP in the center, the basically adenosine triphosphate mechanisms of the human biological system of transduction that can allow the seed form of life to go in a variety of directions. The keys of Enoch are important because they correctly forecast the year 2004. This is in 1973, that there would be a watermark from intelligence coming out of the ocean specifically that would shift the scientific community into the positive side of recognizing the paradigm has changed.
And you knew that when you wrote this book in 73. I wrote this
book under inspiration that there was not only the extraterrestrial, but what Desiree has just said, the extracelestial and the ultra-terrestrial, the bigger picture, which is one of the reasons why the powers that be have not put all the cards on the table, is that the roadmap is too complex.
But you had a vision of a bigger reality, so you're able to see beyond time and space.
Well, let me qualify that. And Dr. Hurtak was actually taken into those other realities, and it wasn't channeled information and any of that. But he literally, and it wasn't a spacecraft. That's the other thing. What we're trying to say is there's these different levels of reality around us. and that we can experience higher realities or local realities. The local realities of the extraterrestrials we consider really aren't that much different from us. I mean, yeah, there's people who are in Buddha-like realities on this planet, and then there's actually those people that are a little bit on the negative side on this planet. That's what you get from the extraterrestrials. You get the variety.
In my experience, which was documented, this is one that I had 24 years ago, after my original experience in 73, was when I was using Hebrew Aramaic mantrams in Mexico, in the area of Tulum. A energy field of light came over my body suddenly, and I was making prayers with the indigenous. One of the persons there was able to capture this in a few seconds, suggesting that we had to understand the work of the indigenous heritage, because that was the middle ground between the scientific on one side and the Orthodox religious traditions on the other. The experiential side, the emotional side, the psychological side had to come into central focus.
Well, let's try to communicate that today using the understanding you have from the higher dimensions, the knowledge you have of the indigenous people. How do we communicate the need for an expanded reality? And that you can.
Well, I think unfortunately we're going to be pushed into that because this reality is not doing so well. So how do you know to be in the right place at the right time? How do you know what technology needs to be developed? All this is coming from, we'll say, it can come, I should say, from a higher insight, from higher realities. We live actually in Silicon Valley, and there are many scientists that we know that in their dreams at night, get the vision, get the information. And so this is really something that we have to start being aware of. And it ties back into remote viewing, which is
and why do the indigenous have these experiences and say no big thing? This is reality. And those of Western education say, well, I'm not sure. I think it comes back to the realization that we've got two sides of the brain. And if we don't emphasize what we call the right side of the brain, which is the multidimensional, the non-local, the metaphysical, symbolically the spiritual, that would be the feminine inner side, we get trapped in only the analytical side, and this doesn't make any sense. Well, and so we have to develop, as it were, a holistic vision.
Right. That's what Neil was saying about the technology, the Newtonian mechanistic world, and obviously these craft are using not only a greater technology, but a greater consciousness of thought, so they can tap into something that's beyond this very narrow frame.
Right. So that's what we've all been talking about, including you, Alan, about the psionics.
Right.
Is because, and this has been known, we did this back in the 70s, shortly after Dr. Hurtaks' experience, but also people do it in CE5s, that your mind can align and tune into these vehicles, even to the point of not only communicating, but perhaps even directing, in some cases, them to you. And ultimately, yes, the vehicles don't have a little joystick that they fly around with. They actually work with, we'll say, the vibrations of the mind. You see this in the Stargate TV series, that the colonel is able to sit in the chair and make things happen because he has the right vibration.
And they're tuning into the craft, which Grant Cameron said yesterday are actually living beings. That's a little hard for me to.
I do want to emphasize that there are special terms now that we must be acquainted with. Psionics, of course, comes from the 1950s. Science fiction writers. It's a term that has what I will call ambiguities. I think the better expression would be the paraphysical and the psychotronic side of recognizing that we have energy skills that are measurable. We're not dealing with simple abstractions, but we're dealing with things that show material direction, measurable situations from remote viewers, and we would call sensitive minds in all parts of scientific work.
Yeah, that's where humanity is going, to create this sensitivity of mind. So we have to drop out of the old paradigm, the old very limited mechanistic left brain logical way of thinking, and realize, as they do in the telepathy tapes, that there's another mind that you can use in order to understand a bigger reality.
But what I want to emphasize, the studies that we were able to published with the late Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, was a friend of ours who worked at Stanford Research Institute, and Lawrence Livermore, one of the top minds in the world who should have gotten the Nobel Prize, unfortunately passed away prematurely. But this book
Mind dynamics.
is really the true X-Files. It's the top scientists, mathematicians, physicists at Stanford Research Institute, also in collaboration with others through the think tanks in the United States, who showed that the most important scientific breakthrough in the latter part of the 20th century was the fact that we are local and non-local human beings.
Exactly.
We're multidimensional beings, able to project our mind to distant places, retrieve information without the use of technology, and bring that information back that can be deciphered or documented through actual measurement processes.
And I always like to emphasize, you think you're going to do that, like the CIA paid for investigations of what was going on in Russia years ago in the 70s. But Ingo Swann showed us you can remote view Jupiter, and he saw the rings around Jupiter. Everyone said, "Oh, you're wrong, it's Saturn." He goes, "No, I know what Jupiter looks like, right?" You talked to him about this. And in actuality, we feel you can go even beyond Jupiter into the higher cosmos and also remote view.
Well, Dr. Hurtak here saw that there were pyramids on Mars before they were published. He called NASA and said, I'm getting a vision of pyramids on Mars. And he said, by the way, there are pyramids on Mars. And he published the first picture of those pyramids in this book, The Keys of Enoch, which you can see there if you hold it up. But
in essence, I was very fortunate to have the opportunity as a result of my higher consciousness experience to see mathematical relationships, not only of the pyramids on Mars, but areas underneath the pyramids of Giza, Egypt, and also where we would go under the ocean off of Taiwan and Japan to find underwater structures. So what I'm saying is the Keys of Enoch represent a tangible roadmap where we were able to execute expeditions with remote sensing technology as well as underwater technology to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the life curve we call human evolution is being now subjected to an update, a penetration by other life forms. The question is, and this is now from all of the government scientists that I've talked to, is this to the advancement of humanity or the surrender of certain genetic prerogatives that we have? Are our precious bodily fluids being taken from us without our permission and ethics being violated, or are we, so we say, co-participants?
I don't think it's an either or thing, and there's many species we're dealing with many different agendas. I think overall we're here to evolve our consciousness and expand.
But you can understand the government scientists, and we have some of the best minds in the world from the top universities in the United States and Europe who've been working on this behind the scenes for more than 50 years. And the situation is the public, in my logic, was not prepared until recent time to accept the fact that certain individuals could be taken without their permission and have their body fluids or their sexual realities manipulated without their consent.
Absolutely. That is a big point of controversy.
But
I agree.
on the other side, which is, I think, the side you're bringing up and others have yesterday, that there are really positive intelligence that are trying to help humanity. So we're going to just go on. And Dr. Hurtak and I actually very closely work with astronaut Gordon Cooper.
His famous book, Leap of Faith, published in 2000, tells the American authorities it's time really to go beyond cover up and to put the cards on the table.
But in 1951, he actually was flying over the border of East and West Germany, and he looked up, and the Russians were there too, and their MiGs looked up and saw a flotilla, not just one, a flotilla of spacecraft. He came back, reported it. What did they do? Make him an astronaut.
They didn't throw him into a
crazy
house. They made him an astronaut. And Gordon became a very good friend of ours, a man of faith, a man of great credibility. We participated with Dr. Sidney Sheldon, famous novelist, in a book called The Doomsday Conspiracy. And so Gordon and I worked behind the scenes to bring forth information that was presented at the United Nations, as well as scientists who sort of slipped away because they knew too much.
But let's go on, because he writes in his book about Harry Truman. He was one of the few presidents that really was willing to come out and say something. He said, I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist,
he's confirming they exist,
absolutely, are not connected to any power on Earth. And I like it back in the, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, because now we have a lot of that UFO technology, but there's still amazing things going on all over the planet that can't be explained by will say, ours or Russia or China's technology.
So some of my work was behind the scenes with several of the Brazilian scientists and military specialists who were able to use exotic technology to take pictures, as we see here, of one flotilla of ships that appeared over the small city of São José dos Campos in southern Brazil in 1986. I was able to secure documentation, which I gave to American authorities, and also this made its way eventually to the BBC. You can see there on the left the strange formation. Each of those spheres are as large as an American football field. There's a strange V-like pattern that is seen in the sky. On the right side, I'm there with my Brazilian counterpart, presenting the documentation that reached also the areas of scientific knowledge. NASA was not prepared at that time to make commentary. This was all done privately behind the scenes. But this session that I had with Brazilian leaders and later European government leaders was the United States should put the issue on the table that we were indeed being visited. The interesting sighting in Brazil was the vehicles, well, we'll call them ultra-terrestrial,
or light ships, actually, would be a better term.
Made their appearance over a nuclear facility that was being built privately that even American NASA authorities were not aware of.
And so, of course, now Lua Elizondo has come out with the Colares case, which is also in Brazil. Brazil is actually a hotspot for UFO. So it's very important. Again, they counted 21 UFOs here.
And those individuals that Elizondo refers to, actually, the Ochoa family were my colleagues. We worked together 20 years before Elizondo got involved in this.
So the question is, when did the cover-up start? And a lot of people point to Roswell, but actually, if you want to really get into it, in 2010, 5,000 pages of correspondence was released to the Ministry of Defense and the National Archives for the public in England. So, and it showed that Prime Minister Winston Churchill ordered a UFO cover-up on the 5th of August, 1944, due to a confirmed military sighting of a UFO. So they actually saw, knew, and everything that there was UFOs watching the war. This is during the war.
Yeah,
and the fact that they're identified makes them also IFOs, identified spacecraft, because there is obviously a larger consensus as to the shape, the form, the variety of velocities.
On Michael Schreck's presentation yesterday, he talked about the long history before Roswell of UFOs that the U.S. has in its possession.
It's interesting to know that Harry Truman did call Winston Churchill because of the events in Great Falls, Montana, and the American Southwest.
Right.
When he was president, and asked Winston Churchill, should this be released?
Mm-hmm.
And Winston told Harry Truman, the people of Earth are not prepared for it. So we have, from the highest levels of authority in the American government and British government, the fact that the consensus was, no, this would have to be put on the back burner.
And I just want to say, so later the British intelligence chief said that on average, one sighting was reported a week way back during the war. So now let's get into, of course, everyone's seen this, hopefully, and if not, go to the YouTube, you can see it. This is the July 26, 2023 House of Representatives.
This was an historic occasion where former military appeared in front of a congressional committee telling them the truth. This is the beginning of the unraveling of disclosure with Ryan Graves, David Grush, and David Fravor.
But this is even more of an historical meeting because Alan's in the picture, right, sitting behind Danny Sheehan.
There you see the white,
he's the middle
white
white
paper
shirt.
of Alan.
Thank you.
Alan, you're part of the team. And then on the upper right, you'll see that myself and Desiree were also able to come in.
We were part of the watch party of Alan of New Reality.
This was the second biggest congressional hearing with Lou Elizondo, Admiral Gallant, Michael Schellinger,
and Gold,
and Gold. And so we're making progress on that front, but it's slow leaking drips of disclosure.
Actually, what you have in your book,
yes,
actually said what they're trying to say.
Yeah,
that was 50 years before.
Thank you.
In other words, what we're saying is what I will call a preliminary, what I would call a dog and pony show to get the American public to come to their senses. Here we have very erudite people from all ranks of government and backgrounds who are saying this is time to grow up.
But what was so important about that hearing is that Anna Paulina Luna came out with some very insightful questions. Obviously, she knew more than the other congressional leaders because she asked these questions. That's
and
right.
now she's part of this truth committee that's bringing out everything from JFK to whatever else. Anyway, and hopefully UAPs. Yeah, here are some of her questions. She asked actually 7 questions. I'm just showing you the last 3. In our previous panel, she said we had David Grush, and he had testified to say that some of these are interdimensional beings. Can you speak on that? I mean, give me a break. She is the House of Representatives from Clearwater, Florida, in that region, and she's asking if these are interdimensional beings. Actually, she was the most exciting part of the entire House of Representatives hearing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So it proves that they are aware of this. We just want the word out to the public about what's possible. People don't even understand interdimensionality, but that's why I'm talking to the Hurtaks today.
Right. So let's look at also question 6, and this is just a short part of it.
Mr. Gold now from NASA. If you can answer this real quickly, some of these aircraft, it seems that they are operating off an energy that we do not currently have. But just yes or no, in your opinion, if we were able to obtain that, would that impact humanity for the better or negative?
What a great question.
What was his answer?
Actually, I think he just went on to talk about the technology and didn't say what it was all about. But now the third question, and of course our time is short, otherwise we'd love to talk all day. Do any of you come across reports of people who claim to have had firsthand experiences with these entities, whether they may be or these aircraft, and then as a result, whether or not they are religious, that means the people who they're encountering, find that these things automatically disappear? What a question.
What a wonderful
Alan.
question.
But we just got word from Jacob Barber that is true. People are interfacing with this craft. He had a spiritual awakening, basically, because he picked up one of these crash retrievals. Now, who's this
I would
woman?
agree with him completely. In my experience, there was a divine feminine form.
Right, that's what he said. Now, this woman is really interesting.
Well, she found a man that picked her up off of the mountains of Drakensberg in South Africa and took her to Alpha Centauri and actually impregnated her. And this is all in the 1950s. Elizabeth Clark was contacted while in the Drakensberg, and she was later taken to actually now, in this case, the planet itself was on next to Proxima Centauri because there's 2 star systems. It's a double star system. And there she stayed on the planet for 4 months. It's called Meton. And she gave birth to a son on the planet and called his name Erling. Now,
So we met her in South Africa years ago. She was interested because in the Keys of Enoch, the name Meton is mentioned. And the fact of the matter is, we recognize that she had information in her notebooks of mathematics that she normally would not have, just as being a normal citizen of South Africa.
So she lived off planet, you're saying?
yeah, for 4 months and had a child.
On Proxima Centauri, a planet around Proxima Centauri.
And Alpha, because there's
She later spoke publicly before the House of Lords in England. She spoke before major groups in Germany and Europe. She was considered crazy by American authorities. But Cynthia Hine of MUFON in South Africa felt it's up to you, the public, to come to your own conclusion.
Right.
But what really happened is that while she was flying in the craft to go to this place, and they had picked her up they picked her up many times, but one time to go there permanently for 4 months, she asked, who are they? Why are they here? All this stuff. And she said, then she was told the radiations in this sun system had become too intense for the well-being of their species, and they were forced to live underground. This, of course, was not to their liking, so they moved off the solar system altogether. They were told they had lived one time, or before this, in Venus, Earth, and Mars, and they had to vacate Venus because of solar flares. So just an interesting topic that she was told this back in the 50s. And of course, now we're being bombarded once again with solar flares, and our magnetosphere is weakening.
So could Venus be a meta symbol? In other words, not so much Venus, but the concept of a new planet or a new place in space?
Or could it be that Mars has a lot of bases underground because they also realized without the magnetosphere that's protecting their field, they had to live underground, which is why we don't see the intelligence.
Well, I've seen evidence under close examination that there are underground structures in Mars that raise a question that previous time cycles would suggest extrasolar intelligence was here probing our solar system and building bases of observation, not only on Mother Earth, but also on our sister planets.
Now, Alan asked me about environmental things. Well, here's the Popocatépetl.
What are they trying to tell us?
Volcano, and they are flying over. Now, someone like Jaime Melson, who's a good friend of ours, thinks that that's one of their bases. I say, no, they're just protecting the population. They have ways to neutralize the volcano from going off because it's only 54 miles southeast of Mexico City, and that's a population of 9 million people. It's still going off now, but you see more and more UFOs flying around it because they know how to neutralize that, and hopefully they can keep it under control.
So this is a very big picture. Certainly, it's provocative. What are government authorities, educated scientists to do? Desiree and I are highly educated. We have serious credentials from major universities. We know that our colleagues were rather reluctant to see this as a bridge to new reality back in the 1970s and 80s. But finally, after 50 years, Russian scientists, and those in Kazakhstan also, have come out by recognizing that there is a higher methodology behind our biological / genetic.
Because I think the most important
system.
question, Alan, and you're in on this too, is who are we?
Right.
How did we get here? Did we really evolve from apes and from amoeba? Or is there an alien message embedded in our
Would this
genes?
be related to the Anunnaki?
Actually, the Anunnaki, we believe, came and tried to corrupt our genetic pool. Dr. Hurtak, in his book, was shown, and you can see this on the right-hand side, that we have a divine code structure. It's a 64-letter code structure that makes all the amino acids and proteins of our body. And basically, even Gary Nolan, who you just interviewed, Alan, it's a great interview. I heard you had
This was all studied by one of our colleagues at Area 51 and by German and Russian scientists. And so you see a very elaborate matrix code where the Hebrew letters of the divine name, Yod He Vod He, relate to the 4 basic building blocks: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen.
And Dr. Hurtak says this in 1973 when he wrote the book. And Gary Nolan says now that DNA and its structure of life seem to be 9 billion years old. The Earth is only 4 billion years old. How do you put 2 and 2 together?
Well, this code goes other levels of complexity on the Max Planck scale. So scaling up, we realized we were a micro intelligence, but through consciousness, the macro and the micro intelligence levels can converge. We can have coexisting timelines. Coexisting timelines means that we can communicate telepathically or using powers of ESP or beyond to understand the roadmap, that we are not alone. We share biological space with other life forms that we may not see with the visible eye, but we can see with technology, or the spiritual eye, commonly called the pineal gland or the third eye.
Well, we'll get back to who we really are, but I just want to show, because Dr. Hurtak and I have traveled with Neil and Alan to Egypt. And of course, the pyramid is always really interesting. And here's a UAP taken in 2019 by the Navy. Here's another one that was filmed. This is a real thing. I'm not going to play any
Or
videos.
actually over the Pentagon.
Over the Pentagon in 2018, I believe it was, in the early mornings.
And that's interesting because if you can look off the screen now to what I'm holding in my book, the first picture in the Keys of Enoch is showing a multicolor bluish violet type pyramidal structure over the earth with the scroll of Esther in the background, namely Esther's, whose name in Hebrew means starborn, or of the stars. Again, the idea is we have been incubated through the concept of the divine mother, or the mothering aspect of space.
So
to realize that we're growing up.
So let's take a look. We believe the Great Pyramid, this is what Dr. Hurtak said also in 1973 and confirmed later by others like who have worked in Egypt. John West and others.
Robert
Bavell.
But they came much later than this original work.
But that the Great Pyramid, and also the Mayans understood this. One side points to Orion and Sirius, what I would say the masculine and feminine aspects of where we come from as a species, and the other side points to Alpha Draconis or Ursa Minor. This is areas where literally there is kind of a controlling mechanism. So
if we take seriously the Egyptian cosmology, the Great Pyramid, amongst being an energy collector, a sound device, a musical activator, is also an astrophysical star pointer to those systems coming from Orion versus those systems coming from Alpha Draconis, or what we would call the mischievous part of Draco in the sky.
So you can see how this all lines up. But I want to say, and we saw this, Alan, right?
Yeah.
That in the solar boat, there's all these different species. And that's really what I want to get
Take
to.
a close look now what Desiree is
You even
referring
see
to.
the serpent type of beings. You see the cat goddesses. You see human people. And then you see animals that have 4 legs. So, I mean, it's not that they thought everything.
But they all have
walked
human
on 2
bodies,
legs.
except they have
So
different
these were
heads.
extraterrestrials.
I believe it's a solar boat of the local universe that they were working with and could pick up on and understood.
We
Now,
would call them the experimental gods.
so who are we? Well, we're the Adamic species. Some people call us the Nordics. We inhabit various star systems, Arcturus being one, Meton, Pleiades, Orion, other places. And you're going to have people like Vivian Javet talk about
And we have
Arcturus.
the proto-human also there from Africa. So we're talking about people of all cultural backgrounds. We want to emphasize again that everybody's now becoming an opportunity to have a spiritual awakening, a consciousness awareness of the fact that there is divine source.
Right.
That we're dealing with a Godhead that respects us if we take the higher path of consciousness development, as opposed to those who violate us, take advantage of our naivete and free
Right.
will.
And so that we like, I know a lot of people like the Anunnaki, but if you really go back to the to what's talking about in the book of Enoch and in other ancient texts, they came, they knew we were a higher species. We're a higher species, actually. We can go and travel. Right now, we're limited because actually it's protecting us. We've been protected for the last 6,000 years. That protection is going away right now. But basically, they like our genetics and they like to manipulate that. That's how we got the giants. So in addition to Adamic species that look like us, we have those with the elongated skulls.
Here I'm being shown with a panorama of different skull types found in East Europe, Central Europe, and even in Peru. And then in the upper right of my screen, we see the elongated skull, the Paracas peoples and cultures of Peru and other parts of South America. Actually, the drawing
And
is made
Egypt,
by
of course.
one of my students of one of the beings that appeared. So we have human-like Adamic features with eyes, the optical system, except that there are those who have a much larger head. And this has been disturbing to anthropologists for many years, except now the new page of anthropology is being turned.
And then Linda talks about the tall whites, and this is put into this book by MUFON called The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, which cites 80 different extraterrestrial races. Dr. Jax talked about in the section of Arcturus, the Arcturus beings, because he mentions that.
But
in the
each of
keys.
these species have a different perspective on reality. It's not
That's
just
right.
they look different, they think differently.
Look here, what we're seeing here, a very famous scientist in the middle of the pictures holding up a sphere. On one side of the sphere, there's the embryological development of the frog. And on the other side is the genetic code of the human embryo over 9 months. So how is that possible that the ancients could have this so perfectly imprinted on a sphere found in Ecuador? Alongside the female scientist, we see on the other side a bird-like feature. Surprise, some of our visitors have bird-like features. We've seen this in ancient texts.
Cat-like faces.
And even in the Gospel of Matthew, it says, where the eagles are gathered together, there the Son of Man shall be. So we have to go beyond the popular mythology and science fiction to realize, no, wait a minute, this is a quantum change. We're very happy to have had those great thinkers behind the scenes that have had to filter all this information. We've had to wait till the age of Steven Spielberg to show the other possibilities of encounters, but we need the emotional as well as the psychological, as well as the spiritual development and attunement if we're going to make sense of nonsense.
So one more picture of aliens, Pascagoula alien. We talked to J. Allen Hynek when he went to interview Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson.
As well as Dr.
73.
James Harder from UC Berkeley.
And they said, this sounds like a robotic intelligence. So, we're not the only ones developing robots. And some of them maybe have some sort of connection. Just really quickly, this is the Betwaters case, which was amazing. It was actually there to neutralize our nuclear weapons that we were having in the area of southern Britain.
According to other scientists involved behind the scenes.
And here's my favorite one.
Right. Once you've seen a UFO, you're entangled with that intelligence. This is something Grant Cameron brings out in this book. So everyone out there, if you've seen something, your consciousness is linked. It's connected. You are part of the phenomena. There are no innocent bystanders.
Yes,
So-
exactly. And it really is this consciousness linkage. Well, we could see this in the
Ancient Indian traditions. This is important. This is part of our heritage from the Egyptian, the ancient biblical documents that speak of judging the angels or
This is
evaluating where we
actually
are.
called the Sea of Milk, and there's many
in
depictions
the
of this.
Indian Sanskrit tradition, yes, the Sea of Milk with the avatar at the center, and then you have the opposition around the center. We will call the Sea of Milk on one side, the Asuras on the other side, the Devas, and at the bottom, the turtle shell, which represents not simply Turtle Island, but the vehicle that he saw coming out of the ocean of unconsciousness.
Right.
So there's the extracelestials, which really kind of are the vehicles of energy, of light, but they can work
Will bring us
around.
consciousness attunement and use music, a very important part of growing up. The use of music in vibratory physics to awaken body, mind, and
Well,
spirit.
that's what makes your teaching with the keys so important, because you add the elements of sound and vision to your text.
But he also came from a background of understanding the Far East. And look at this picture. I mean, what does it show? It shows that there's a mindset controlling and managing many aspects, but we're really just one little world of the multiple realities.
In the
of tree of
1970s, I
life.
worked with scholars from UC Berkeley. We worked in India and Tibet to microfilm these very rare documents of cosmology, showing that we were basically in a schoolhouse and we had to learn the lessons of spiritual evolution, where there were forces that would try to negate us. On the other hand, forces that would try to bless us. So as the Tibetans have shown, as the Hindu traditions have shown, as the ancient biblical traditions and the indigenous have shown, in all parts of world culture, we accept the fact we're not alone in the universe, but there is a cosmic code in the biblical and the language, the Enochian tradition, the Torah, the Etzilut, the cosmic law that is the eternal one that has to be respected.
So I have to say, I love this film, Interstellar. I think everyone who's watching this should have watched it, but it actually shows us, I think, what's going on right now. If you remember, this astronaut, hero, went into other dimensions. He was able to come back really in terms of mental contact, only mental contact. Physically, he wasn't able to. Mental contact with his daughter and told her how to save the planet. I think this is what's going on right now. We're getting messages, we're getting information from our higher selves, from other dimensional realities that are helping us save the planet and giving us pathways of how to also get off the planet and be cosmic beings once again.
Right. And it has to do with consciousness. When you activate the consciousness field, like these pictures show, you're expanding the nature of your understanding of reality.
Right. The Chinese traditions shows the many heads that we have as we evolve our chakras, open up with the biblical writer, John the Divine refers to the 7 seals. As we open up, we begin to see and work multidimensionally. Omnidirectionally, we begin to understand the cosmic Christ energy. On the far right of the screen is where I'm sitting. We see what the Russian and European scientists have shown, that there are these paraphysical dimensions that also open up. But we have to have the synergy to put this together. And thus, we are prepared to see what a student of ours has drawn from South Africa, the ultra-terrestrial beings who have no bodies, as we define them, but faces of joy, faces that have artistic beauty. Ultimately, we understand ourselves as multidimensional, non-local beings.
Yeah, this is when you do remote viewing. You're not going with your whole body somewhere. You're actually going with your consciousness mind, and you're not even traveling. This is something that Russell Targ
This is
and
our
Elizabeth
book.
worked on, that found out that there is not a matter of traveling from one place to another. You're not sending and receiving. You are part of the consciousness.
Again, if we
world.
can look from the screen to what I'm holding,
Well,
this is the
not-
book
I
that
think
Russell and I
it-
put
Wait till
together.
we finish the
In 1 minute,
slideshow.
I think it would be better.
This is a very interesting drawing that Desiree put together, showing a light being.
This is really what we're going to be ultimately seeing. You can see the physical, you can see the extra celestial, but then these are the ultra terrestrial.
Is this really who we are potentially?
This is our higher nature before we came into a 3/4 dimensional reality.
Right.
This is the 5th and 6th dimension of realizing that we have a consciousness
Beautiful.
that can take us in any directions, as we see here in these beautiful cosmograms or cosmic pictures found in the Keys of Enoch, which you can go for our website, keysofenoch.org. You see the multidimensional hierarchies, but there in the center is the female form Y. We begin with the right hemisphere first. The opening to the joy of life through the human heart, the mind then being conditioned to see and work holistically through energy, through sacred geometry, and through sound, and ultimately as we expand from our three-dimensional self to our fifth-dimensional self, we begin to participate in the galactic or cosmic family.
So
Seen at the
a
top.
final picture. This is really who we are. We're going not only into the local universe, but we're also going beyond the local universe.
And the bars represent the musical chord structure within with the biomusic connected with the biophotonics
Right.
that are energized. And in the book that's advertised, the 76 names of the Divine Father, and other books that we put out, the 76 names of the Divine Mother, the 72 names of the Divine Mother, and the 76 names of the Divine Christ. These ancient names are also musical codes, how we energize ourselves, how we raise ourselves and put on the crown of glory, manifested in the life of the saints, the avatars, and the great spiritual teachers.
So we're going to go back, if we can, to
The normal
The picture?
studio
Yeah.
setting.
Neil, can you just put us back? There we are.
So I'm holding the book that Russell Targ and I put out
And
some
let me
time
just put it
ago.
up to the screen. This is called The End of Suffering.
And there in center is a very important picture by Ingo Swann, the foremost American psychic artist. There you see how the human mind opens up like a cosmic egg, and you see a whirling galaxy within that cosmic egg, or your higher mind.
This is the
You
multi-dimension.
overcome suffering, which is attachment to the three dimensions and the dualistic game being played out in politics, economics, and geo manipulations.
So
You realize in all of this, we are beings of the universe in human form. We are representing the cosmic mind in human experience.
So one of the key things from yesterday was, how do you end the trauma? A lot of people who've had experiences with ETs have had trauma.
Yes.
And this is a big topic. And we feel that it's understanding who you are, understanding that you're not alone in the experience, and understanding the multi-levels of cosmic intelligence. And you actually can bring in the higher consciousness realities, and you can experience those cosmic realities, like Ingo Swann, remote view
But
Jupiter.
Sometimes, as Tara de Liberto said, sometimes a shock will open you to new possibilities because we're really locked into a very limited worldview. So based on your presentation today, what can people take away with them about meeting these ETs on an even playing field?
Well, in all of the investigations I've made in Brazil, privately with Dr. Harmonic and others, with leading shamans in Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, there is a sense of understanding the joy of life. And that in order to put all this together, we have to realize we're here in this form to help the human race evolve, to raise consciousness. But that requires a sense of humility, and not to use only one side of the brain, the analytical left brain that leads to the pomposity of the mind as the male figure dominating all the situations, all the scenarios. We need the sense of what the Divine Mother represents in all of the cultures. It means a sense of sublimating our energies through music, through quietude of meditation, through artistic balance, reaching out with the sign of the rainbow.
Right.
And in my personal work, the understanding of the cosmic Christ, recognizing that we are but one of many families in part of a much greater galactic family of creation. We are just waking up in a vast and awesome universe to the divine spark of what we will call the consciousness of the creator within the cosmic.
So there's a greater hope. And I think that's important. When you see these other beings, whether they're doing something to your physical body, which in a certain sense, you should try to raise that consciousness to reach into greater beings who can help and protect. That's what Luna was saying. If they're religious, sometimes they just disappear. So if you call out to divine names or higher vibrations, there will be a change. But considering that you are just now encountering some of these greater beings, there is a greater hope, because we are no longer limited to this physical planet. We will be like those of Elizabeth Clark, traveling to the stars. We will be like those of the cosmic
children in
and the other
Africa.
point I think you're making with the spiritual knowledge, that we have to shift how we see ourselves in relationship to a bigger reality. We're not separate. Life is an abundant essence throughout the cosmos. We're not a freak of nature.
And if you
We
look
are
at all
part
of the
it.
stories, the classical stories of contact, they're always with music, harmonic, whether it was Ezekiel chapter 3, whether it was the avatars in the Far East, whether it was the Christ child hearing, as it were, the coming of the celebration from the angelic dimension. Put this in modern scientific language, the ultra-terrestrial beings trump the extraterrestrials. We have to go to higher levels of symphony and synergy, and this requires a type of musical vibration we need every day to be as positive as possible.
It's vibration, and even Jacob Barber said it was like song. That was such a strange part of his testimony when he had this mental contact with the craft. He says it's like song. It's feminine. It was beautiful. So we need to go there if we're really going to make contact with these.
I would like to close with the testimony of King David in Psalm 122. Okay. He writes, "I was happy when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord." That house of the Lord begins in the tabernacle of our heart, in the vibrations of love for all humanity, in the recognition that there is a divine source, that we are being educated to discern the different levels of Jacob's ladder as we are brought into the realization of the house of many mansions, spoken about the Christ figure. We are now in a fantastic time of quantum change, but we must have the careful balance: music, education, harmonics, higher science of the spheres, what the ancient Greek philosophers called. The music of the spheres is absolutely necessary for balance and harmony.
And what's really interesting is really we are on the verge of first contact. This is going to be so exciting for everyone on the planet. I believe people have incarnated for this. And it's not only contact with extraterrestrials, because of the shift of our planetary system that's taking place, the magnetosphere and other aspects. I believe that contact actually can reach, or we can reach into higher levels of reality.
But at the same time, there will be ontological shock, as Tara spoke about yesterday. We have to be able to be those emissaries and educators of raising consciousness and realizing there's hope in purpose. And this is a type of graduation into the university of the cosmos.
It's about letting go of the old ways of looking at the world, the old ways of seeing, the old ego structures, and embracing these bigger, I'll say, new realities that are awaiting us. So,
as you can see by the picture behind us, there is the opening now of the higher, what you call upper evolutionary frontier.
It's hopefully a view that all of us will soon experience. But
the overview
effect, as actually that was what stimulated astronaut Edgar Mitchell to get him into the idea of remote viewing and how we have a non-local consciousness and how on this planet we need to be seeing each other as all one humanity.
Cosmic citizens.
For people who don't know Richard Doty, he was a counterintelligence officer. Is that right, Richard? And
yes,
responsible, I would say, for some disinformation inside the government to the public. But since that time, especially over lunch, you said you're not doing that anymore. You said actually, sorry for some of the things you were involved with. And well, how would you define your career inside the intelligence field?
Well, I was a counterintelligence officer for the United States Air Force. And my job was to conduct counterintelligence operations. We didn't call the operations disinformation. We call them deception operations. We worked operations to gather intelligence from different groups that we needed. We needed the information to protect classified operations within the government. And that was my job. Myself and many other intelligence officers were doing the same thing. Now, did that involve disinformation, as the layperson would call it? Absolutely. Yeah, we did. We did do that. And I've discussed this many, many, many times before over the years at UFO conventions that I did what I was told to do. If I had to do some of the things over again, I probably wouldn't have done it the way that I did it. But I was instructed to do things, disinform UFO groups, which I did. I used sources of information to do that, such as Bill Moore, prominently mentioned many times as being an agent within our government, and he was my asset, we called him, And he would penetrate UFO groups, gather information, and then report it back to me. And this was just not happening with me. There were, during my time period from 1978 to 1988, there were 122 other counterintelligence officers in the United States doing the exact same thing that I was doing.
Right. So you're not in that field anymore. You're still connected, though you work with the Advanced Working Group, who are, I mean, because you're as inside the field as we've gotten on this kind of conference. So who's part of the Advanced Working Group, and what's their objective?
Well, the Advanced Working Group, has been around for over 25 years. Most of the members are retired intelligence officers or retired military officers who worked in intelligence. We have within our group right now a number of retired DIA employees, CIA employees. We have former directors of the DIA, former directors of the CIA, former directors of the National Security Administration, former commanders of intelligence units. That's what the Advanced Working Group is made up of. And our goal from the moment I joined it back in 2002 was to advance disclosure. We wanted to find a way, a rational, common sense way to facilitate disclosure of the subject of UFOs, UAPs to the public.
So are you at counter odds to the people still wanting to keep the secret that that you may have been working for?
Well, that's a good question, Alan, because it's complex. There are people within the intelligence community, the active people, not the retirees, but the active people that don't want the subject brought up. They don't want disclosure to occur. The United States Space Force, which is a new branch of the government, I say new, it's been around for 5 or 6 years, they're against any type of disclosure. And they've said it, and they've said it openly. So, but there are elements within the CIA and the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, who don't want full disclosure. Now, realistically, we'll never get full disclosure. I think we'll get partial disclosure.
We won't get full. I mean, this is what people are hoping for. Why are you saying that we'll never get full disclosure?
Because there's certain aspects of the program that are highly classified that would endanger national security. That information will never be disclosed. I mean, we can hope and pray, but that's never going to be disclosed. But there's going to be certain elements of disclosure that will be disclosed. I think we presented last year, last July, it'd be a year ago this coming July, to the U.S. Senate. And the Advanced Working Group is more aligned to the U.S. Senate than to the U.S. House of Representatives. But we provided the Senate, at that time, the majority leader was Chuck Schumer. We provided him with a very detailed list of things that can be disclosed that's not going to damage national security. For instance, the history of when the United States government became involved with UFOs. Now, do we want to go back to 1947 or do we want to go back to before that? I only know of what information I was briefed into that pertained to 1947 and on. But I understand that there could very well be information that was developed way before that time. But whatever time we want to start with, we can tell the American people, yes, in 19 whatever year, we found a craft site. We recovered a live extraterrestrial. We can progress that timeline up to present day, and I don't think that's going to damage national security at all. In our working group, what's going to be the problem is the technology that we've learned from extraterrestrials. I don't know that we can. And I think Geraldine mentioned that. I mean, she gave excellent presentation. I was very, very impressed by a lot of things that she said, which is absolutely truthful as far as what the government is doing. But there are certain aspects of the technology that we're not going to disclose because we don't want the Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans or the Iranians to get a hold of that information.
Right. Now, why would the Space Force be against just saying, guess what? We have craft and bodies. What's wrong with that?
Good question. I don't know. They are afraid that once disclosure starts, there's going to be elements within the government that will push for more disclosure that will eventually release information that shouldn't be shared with the public. I think that's the idea, or that's the mentality of the U.S. Space Force.
Right. And we'll get into that a little bit. So there's this thing called the Legacy Program. Can you, because I've heard many definitions, what do you understand of what's called the Legacy Program?
The Legacy Program is a history information that we have obtained, and all the people that are involved from the way back up until now. I mean, there've been so many people that have been involved in this subject. So the legacy is the history combined with the people involved with that history. That's my understanding of the Legacy Program. And there's famous people. My former employee, I worked for Dr. Putoff for 12 years. He's instrumental in this program, the Legacy Program. He's instrumental in talking about the subject because his group was intimately involved in this, and I was when I worked for him at the Institute for Advanced Studies. But there's other people like Eric Davis, Admiral Claudette, Colonel Nell, you name it. And there's people, and there's another thing that people don't realize. There are so many people that are working on disclosure right now that are behind the scenes. You don't know who they are because they've never come forth. They've never testified in front of Congress. Their names have never been revealed. Those are the key players in this disclosure process. Those are the people that are within the Lou Elizondo's groups and the ones that are within our group, the Advanced Working Group. You don't know their names because they've never gained any publicity. They're sitting back and waiting for that time to come forth and say, I was the deputy director of the National Security Agency, and I did all these things pertaining to UFOs or UAPs.
Well, let me ask you, because I've been wanting to know the answer to this question about the hierarchy. So there's you're getting orders from someone, then there's someone like Hal Putoff, who maybe knows a little more. He told Elizondo there were two craft at Roswell. And then, Elizondo, Lou Elizondo, Hal Putoff, they're sort of on that same level. But beyond them, they're getting orders from someone else that you're saying maybe we never heard of, and they're maybe controlling DOPSR, what's allowed to be said. Those are the names we've not heard. And then above them, from what I've heard, there's an interaction, even James Fox in the program says, between those highest levels and the ET themselves. Is that true? Did I lay that out, or is that not true?
Well, partly, Alan. You hit on some good points there. I personally don't have any knowledge of any kind of relationship that the United States government has with extraterrestrials. Whether we have a treaty now, that we may, I just don't know about it. I've never heard about it. I've never read about anything in any classified documents. I've never heard anybody in authority talk about it. But I'm not saying that it couldn't be true. I'm just saying I personally don't know about it. So I can't really comment on something I don't know about it. Right. But there is a hierarchy in this.
Yeah.
Linda Howell talks about the MJ-12. She's done a lot of great research. I always fall back on her because she's really a good researcher in this arena. And there was a entity, I'll call it, that controlled everything that was ever disclosed, or they controlled everything pertaining to the subject of UFOs going back 19.
Is that who is the entity you're talking about?
Well, that's a good question. I don't personally know everyone that's involved in the MJ12 or the former. It's the name has changed over the years.
Oh, right. And there's been originally with Truman a 12 people. Right. Okay, follow.
Right. Yeah, that group, and then over the years, people have replaced them, and so that is probably one of the most secretive parts of this dilemma, is that we don't know who these people are. I don't know who they are. I don't know the names of these people, but I know that they exist because there's certain aspects of our job. When I was working in intelligence, information was coming down the channel. There's always a chain of command in the intelligence community or within the military that I'm on the bottom of the field investigator. I'm doing a job. For instance, the Paul Benowitz case, I write a report, I send it up to DIA. They tell me then what to do. The information comes down. But when I study what information is coming down, I can realize, I realize immediately that there's more than one player in this game. And so then I realized at a very early stage in the late 70s that there wasn't just one person up at DIA, Carl Dale, Carl Dale was his name. He passed away a long time ago. He was actually my interface up there. But I would talk to him on a secure line, and he would say, well, I have to go someplace else to get that information. And then when he went to somebody else, they told him, well, they had to go to somebody else to get that information. So at an early stage, I realized that there was more than one person involved. There was a large number of people involved in this UFO dilemma, I call it, or a enigma, and that information comes down from somebody else, eventually through 5 or 6 other people, down to the field. So I wish I knew where or who these people were, but that's how it operated. It was a dilemma or an enigma inside a conundrum, so to speak, is a way I would explain it. Because there are a lot of people even in a command position. We're talking about a flag officer, a colonel, who still didn't understand where the information was coming from.
Right. So it's coming from somewhere, but someone knows. I mean, you can't, it's just not, evaporating. But let me go back to what Lisa brings out in the chat here. Like you say, okay, the government doesn't want to give away their secrets, but it seems like Russia and China probably also have crash retrievals. They reverse engineered. So is there really a big secret here about technologies that they don't want to share? Or it seems like that's a bad excuse for keeping secrets, and maybe everyone really knows the secret and there's something else going on that they really don't want us to know about. Like, how could they have $1 trillion defense budget and be defenseless? So I'm just saying it's probably a lot more than what you're saying. Maybe.
Well, yeah, there is a lot more to it. We have probably a better, the United States government, I'm talking about us, the government, U.S. government, has a better advanced technology arena than other countries do. And so we have really highly classified or secret programs within DARPA that are dealing with the subject of UAP reverse engineering. And we have done things that are extraordinary, and I mean extraordinary.
Can you, like what?
Reverse engineering.
Can you give us?
Well, yeah, I can. What if I could? What if I told you that we had time travel back in the 80s? and it wasn't what we developed. It was what was given to us. We were given something, and I can't go into great
by the ETs.
By ETs, yeah, the ETs, the visitors gave us something, and we realized, oh my God, this would work, and therefore we have something, time travel. So that's just one of many, many, many things. Also, we have, this is just a example, I'm not going to say example. I'm going to say, what if I was to tell you, and I'm hypothetically, okay, that we have a warehouse locked up someplace, that we have so much high tech in there that we got from the extraterrestrials, or we developed through reverse engineering, that just in case, if we had a war, there isn't any way in the world any other country could beat us, because we would open this warehouse and bring out all these toys and give them to the military, and we would defeat any other armies. So we have advanced our technology. We just don't want the Russians or the Chinese or the North Koreans or the Iranians or any other enemies we have to know about what we have locked up in that warehouse.
All right. Well, that's fair. So, I mean, there's so many places to go with that answer, but how come, just take it simple. When the drones appeared over New Jersey, the government comes out, or whoever, the military said, well, we don't know what's going on. Are they covering up what they really know? Or are they afraid to say, oh, this is our technology? Or what's going on in those situations as a counterintelligence officer?
Well, I can say that my belief, this is just Rick Doty talking. I'm not saying that I have a classified document here that I'm reading from. I'm saying that the United States government knew everything that was occurring in New Jersey and southern New York State and eastern Pennsylvania. The drone sightings, the orbs that were being seen, the crafts that were morphing into something else, we knew what they were. I don't know what they were, but I can guarantee you that the United States government knew everything that was going on. They're just not telling us.
Well, were they extraterrestrial or our technology? What were they?
I think some of them were extraterrestrial. I actually strongly believe, and that was just not me. Many people within the working group are a lot smarter about this subject than I am, believe that there's a lot of things that were photographed and videos taken that were of extraterrestrial origin.
So why can't people come forward? Well, you're coming forward now, I appreciate it. But the working group with those ex-officers and come forward publicly and say, yes, this exists. I mean, maybe Alessandro's part of that, but why can't they come forward in mass saying it's over, the lies, it's time to end the truth embargo, as Steve Bassett would say? Why can't we do this?
Alan, I wish I had a magic wand that could order these people or tell them to do that, because I'm all for that. The Senate is all for that. It's the government, the intelligence community, that puts limitations on these people with that knowledge. Now, I've been out of the government since 1988. Well, I was called back once, but I've been out basically since 1988. Yeah, I worked for Dr. Putoff, and I had a security clearance, all that stuff. But since then, I've been out in the public. I've been making movies. I've been writing scripts. I have hundreds of Gaia videos out there. I'm trying to promote and do it behind the scene disclosure myself. And I wish that these people within the advanced working group that has all this knowledge, a lot more knowledge than I have. I mean, that we have directors of Central Intelligence that could come out tomorrow and talk about what they knew. And I don't know that many people would actually believe him, because it's so out of this world. There's another part of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there's another part of this that is very, very, very sensitive. We had a extraterrestrial in captivity from 1947 and 1952, and that particular extraterrestrial, we were able to eventually communicate, and it told us things about our planet and about how long they've been living here and what they've been doing. And I think Geraldine mentioned some of this stuff that would shock the public if the government actually came out and said,
"Tell us some of that. I want to hear what they said." Go ahead. Don't hold.
What if? I don't. I'm not here to say to be a spokesman for anybody, but I'm saying that what if we were told that 2,000 years ago, and I'm saying this hypothetically, but you got to read between the lines. What if Jesus Christ was actually an extraterrestrial? What would that do to religion? But there's a lot of other aspects to that is even more sensational, that could affect people, religious groups, or religions in general, or things about ourselves. Hybrids. What if they mated with us thousands of years ago, and we've developed into something that is different as far as what we imagined ourselves to be? So, I mean, all these things that we might know, that how would the public react to this stuff?
Yeah, no, I love that stuff, but who's to say these ETs, whoever they are not making stories up? Because it's been told that some of them lie about some of that. So they could say Jesus was an extraterrestrial. Maybe he was, or they could be saying that for other reasons, right? I mean,
the thing about it is, here's the point. They're not going to tell us that Jesus was an extraterrestrial, because number one, they are not educated like we are educated. They're so far advanced. They're going to tell stories about what they did, and then we'll read into whatever they tell us. So I'm not saying that they say, well, your Jesus was an extraterrestrial. That's not ever going to happen, because they don't have our knowledge or our upbringing, and our religious understanding. And then another thing you got to understand that people get so confused on is that there's not just one race of extraterrestrials that have visited Earth. This is something that Reagan was really fascinated in when he was briefed back in 1981. He was told at that time there were 5 different races that we know that have visited Earth. And why do we know it? Because we have crafts that are at least 5 different technologies. We have extraterrestrials who are not the same biologically or physiologically. And we have technologies that are all different. So we know then, we knew then, and we know now that there are other races. So when we talking about one particular species, the Ebens, that have visited Earth, and that crashed in 47, and we found a craft also in 49. So there were 2 crashes. But what about the Kingman crash? The Kingman crash in 1953 involved an entirely different species of extraterrestrials. Okay, the 1964 crash in Nevada near the Ant Mine, entirely different species of extraterrestrials. So in a matter of 15 or 20 years, there's 3 species that we know that have visited Earth. Now, when I was briefed in 1978, there were 5. Reagan was briefed on 5. So they all have different technologies. How did they all interface with Earthlings? I don't know. I wish I did. Maybe Geraldine knows a lot more about it than I do. But there are other species that have interacted with humans, not just one. So that's the confusion that some people put into this story.
Right. Linda Moulton Howe talks about the Reagan document where he was briefed by 5 different races, some of them not so friendly, some of them friendly.
Yep.
She also says there's 3 competing races of ETs for control over the earth. I mean, there's so many levels to this. But let me ask you about your personal experience. Did you ever see an ET or a visitor when you were working inside, if you can tell us?
There were 2 occasions where I have had a viewing of an extraterrestrial. One was in I worked at Area 51 on 2 different occasions, and I was a counterintelligence officer out there. There were 4 other AFOSI agents out there with me, but on one particular occasion, I went to a S2 annex. It was called an X2 annex, which is a little bit northwest of the Groom Lake Toman area. I went up there to interview somebody regarding an investigation. I went into an area, a control room, and I watched a closed circuit monitor of an extraterrestrial in another room. So I actually saw one, but it was through a closed circuit.
And what can you describe what you saw in that moment?
Yeah. It was a typical. I would call it a typical gray. It was small, about 4.5 foot tall. Had very, very large eyes, no ears, large head, small slit for a mouth. It didn't have any vocal cords. It wasn't able to speak words. Couldn't speak a word, but it did make sounds. The sounds came out of the head and not out of the mouth. Now, I don't know how that. I can't explain that. I'm not a doctor, but the sounds that were being made were coming out of the head, and I don't know the full story of what they were doing in that room and whether they were understanding or whether they were communicating. So that's what I saw.
And what was the other occasion you saw?
The other occasion was one that had escaped from captivity at the complex at S2 annex. It made its way all the way up to an area called the northern perimeter of the Nellis Test and Training Range, up near a place called Silver Bow. That's an old mining area. It was shot and killed by military police, and I was up there to help investigate the incident. And I saw it. It was dead, but I saw it. Now, this entity was large, about probably 7 foot tall. It had a very large head, and a facial appearance looked like a praying mantis to me. I didn't see all of the body because part of it was covered. It had a cape. It was on the ground, serpine, face up. And the hands were very large, and it didn't look like it had a thumb, but the fingers were webbed. There were webs in their fingers, and that's about all I can remember seeing.
I've never heard that type of being described before. But what about the fact that they are interdimensional? Let's go into a whole other angle here. That's sort of been the theme of these last 2 days, a level of consciousness, the fact that maybe they're here to help or evolve us. Of course, we're talking about different groups with different agendas. What do you think of the fact that they're here for our evolution and movement forward as human beings, or not?
Well, let's talk about interdimensional. Dr. Putoff wrote a paper a few years ago about transdimensional, and if you read that paper, it's very fascinating. But there's a possibility that a particular species comes from a far distance, thousands of light years, and they come to Earth, and instead, because they're so advanced, instead of traveling back and forth, they're able to move within dimensions. So when they're not here in our dimension, they move into another dimension and stay there until they have to come out and come interact with us. So that that's a possibility. I can see that's a possibility. Now, interdimensional beings, I've never read anything official. I mean, I've read thousands of classified documents pertaining to UFOs and extraterrestrials. I've never read anything pertaining to interdimensional. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but during my time, I never read anything about them. Maybe they do exist. Maybe they're out there. What their particular agenda is dealing with us, I wish I knew. But one of the things I learned from Dr. Puthoff when I worked for him is that when we humans try to understand extraterrestrials, we have to totally take ourselves out of our box and go into their box, because they don't think like we do. They don't reason like we do. They have a different brain. One particular species has 24 lobes in their brain, which is a lot more than we have. And they're able to do things with their mind that we could never do. And so in order to try to understand it, we can't put our human thoughts about what they are thinking or what they're doing. We have to try to think the way they would think, but that's almost impossible unless we're taught by them. And I understand that we do have some extraterrestrials someplace. I think they're probably out at Groom Lake that are helping us. J-Rod, when I was around, there was a good, healthy, we call them within the military, a healthy rumor. That means it's probably fact that J-Rod was working out there with us on reverse engineering in an area called S2.
J-Rod's an extraterrestrial, for people who don't know, who worked with Dan Burrish, who had a telepathic, I guess, communication relationship with this being, and he's been speaking about that publicly. So, but do they? I guess they all have different agendas here, but but we're really kept in the dark because we're first not told that this exists, and that there's a bigger reality. We're like the people looking at the shadows in Plato's cave, not realize. So if we were told this, what do you think the consequences for the planet and human species would be if we were told the truth?
Well, it's hard to say how the human would react, or humanity would react. Some people could understand it. Some rational people could sit down and say, okay, I understand this. The universe is very vast. There has to be life out there. How they found us, I don't know, but they're here. Let's try to work with them. Let's try to understand them. And then there's others that would hit the fright button, and they would go into a panic mode, and no telling what would happen in certain groups. There are certain groups out there that would probably have adverse reactions to the knowledge that there are extraterrestrials that have visited Earth. So it's hard to say. I've never studied that in that manner. I know a professor in one of my master's classes that talked a great deal about this subject, and he thinks that if you start, and this is way before, this is back in the 90s when I was going to do the program. He wanted the release of information. And back in those days, let's talk about the extraterrestrials. Let's release this stuff. Disclosure wasn't the word, but they were using different words about it. And he said, let's do it in increments. So we will condition the public. And I think, and although in fact, I don't think, I actually know that at one time we did have a program started way before my time, but back in the 50s, to condition the public about the UFOs. And one of the early, very, very early motion picture that came out that the United States government cooperated with was The Day the Earth Stood Still in 1951. I know that because I knew the man, the Air Force officer that was on set advising the producers and the directors about that movie. He said he's passed away now, but he talked to us about that. Was one of many movies that the U.S. government helped Hollywood produce to try to condition the American public for the phenomena of UFOs.
I just saw that not too long ago because it's historic in its production. They say at the end, we want humankind to give up their weapons and become peaceful. And you're saying that was dictated to them by the ETs, but obviously that didn't happen. So
well, there's well, let's look at it this way. Let's look at July of 1945. In the desert of New Mexico, we exploded a nuclear weapon, a Trinity site. Devastating. It would have been devastating to anybody living in that area. Okay. And then a month later, we dropped 2 bombs on a country in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Now, I think we sent a message to space when we exploded that Trinity site detonation in July 1945. I think we advertised into space that we had some kind of horrible weapon system. And if you start looking at the timeline of sightings of UFOs, and there were a lot of sightings that were really reported because the people didn't have any way of reporting it from right after 45. And in the fall of 1945 in New Mexico, around Socorro and around the TRC and around Bingham, a small, very community that was northeast of Trinity site, there were literally hundreds of sightings of strange things in the sky. They didn't know what they were, and they didn't report them. Years later, researchers went out and talked to some of these people or relatives of these people. So what did we do in 1945? We set off a detonation of a nuclear device. We set off 2 more a month later, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Immediately after that, we started being visited. Why? Now these extraterrestrials are coming here to say, what the hell are you doing here on your planet? What is this weapon system that you're using? Why are you using this? Why are there wars? And I think if you look at it that way, I think the word went out through some kind of intergalactic, maybe a radio signal, that there's a planet down here in the solar system that is so crude that they're killing people with these horrible weapons. And that's what brought, and this is just, some people believe this, and I wish I could say this was my idea, but there are people smarter than me that think that that's how and why we started being visited.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's why they appeared over nuclear weapon silos. That's why they went to Rendlesham Forest. I mean, I've heard that. So in a way, would you say all these different visitors coming here, these different races, could they be unified in their efforts to raise our consciousness? Because hope you could stick around for the panel, because the real theme is consciousness here, I think. So what's your take on why they're really here? It's not just to check us out, like, the kids have the car keys. We better watch them so they don't destroy themselves. But it's also, how do we relate to these beings? And you're saying they're here to help us. I think that's what you're saying. So can you put all that together?
Well, I think there are probably one or two races here that are very docile, malevolent, that are here to help us, or because the J-Rod is one from a particular species that was here. I don't know if he's still here, but is trying to advance our technology. So they're helping us. And I understand that there was another one, but I don't know much about that one. So I think there are probably some here, but we do have one that I know for a fact that came here with hostile intent. And that's the one that President Reagan was so worried about. That's why he made all those statements, because that particular species have killed or harmed humans. And so I think that particular species didn't come here as with a white flag. It came here to, I think, as we can't get into their mind, it probably came here with looking at us as maybe ants. You know, these are inferior species on this horrible planet, and we're going to try to experiment with them and so forth and so on. And that's why this particular species was responsible for abductions and maybe even other horrible experiments with embryos taken out of women's.
But some people say the abductions were a positive thing for some. After they get over the trauma, it was a kind of an awakening. That's sort of what some people have said this last 2 days. So you're saying maybe they're just here service to self as opposed to service to others. So,
well, let me tell you this. I investigated some abductions, and there is a woman, a former Air Force sergeant, who is a whistleblower. She hasn't been in public yet. She's one of a number of whistleblowers whose name has not appeared any place. But I can tell you right now, if you ask this former Air Force sergeant whether her abduction was a wonderful experience, she's probably going to punch you in the nose, because she went through some horrible experiences during her many abduction sequences. We called them, and she was harmed, and she was maimed. She still has scars today. She would be the number one person that I would bring out to testify before Congress and regarding abductions. Now, there were a lot of abduction cases that the military investigated that it's still not, there's never been released to the public because of what we learned from these victims of abductions and what their experiences were and some of the things they told us. Now, there may be some out there, and I've met many abductees, former abductees at UFO conventions, that it started out as a hostile situation, but once they switched from being a abductee to an experiencer or a contactee, things changed, and that was because they cooperated with the particular species of extraterrestrial. Now that could be true, but the ones that I know and ones I investigated, and there weren't a vast number of them, but there were a good number of them, were hostile. And I know that these people that went through these abductions wouldn't tell you that it was a wonderful experience.
Well, I've talked to Whitley Strieber. He said he went through a difficult time, but came out the other side, and he's at peace with this. A lot of people have said, so there's really these two sides of this. You get people like Chris Bledsoe saying he was healed. These are benevolent beings. And of course, you get the awful stories from people like Carla Turner, who had really, really difficult times. So there seems to be a polarity. Some people are thinking maybe it's the mind of the person that is affecting their reality, depending on their attitudes? I don't know the answer. I think I've had that kind of abduction that, well, I don't remember it all, but it was definitely an evolution and opening up for me. I wouldn't be as fascinated if this didn't happen. So maybe it's more complicated than just good or bad, I would think. I mean, I don't know.
I agree with you. I've never went through it, but I've sat across from people, especially this female sergeant, who sat there with tears running down her cheek, explaining. And one of the things that I can't go into great details because some of that stuff is still classified. We actually proved that she was being abducted. And so, I mean, I can't go into it, but because there were a lot of facets involved in that. But you know, when I first heard her story, I didn't know a whole lot about abductions back then. I didn't even know that we had this thing called abductions by extraterrestrials. But then I found out that briefly in the program, I found out that was true, that there were, and they were targeting specific people, mostly military, back in the days that I learned about it. But one of the things you brought up is consciousness. One of the only ways the United States government, and I was involved in two different programs dealing with trying to establish a means to communicate with extraterrestrials. And there were all these different ways that they were trying to do it, and none of it worked. I mean, we had some in captivity and we were trying to communicate, didn't work. What they found was, and I didn't know a whole lot about it then, I just am fascinated with consciousness today. I mean, I read every single book I could think of or could buy regarding consciousness. That's the key to communicating with the extraterrestrials, is consciousness.
Okay, awesome. Okay, awesome. Again, it is such a pleasure to be here, and this is such an important topic. And it's been more recently, I've had a tremendous amount of information coming through about the eminence and the importance of this topic for humanity. And so I guess over the past few months, deep diving into preparation for how I can hold better space for those of you that are coming into this new realm. We have to go through a kind of re-education of several aspects of ourselves, mind, body, and soul, physics, science, in order to better understand the changes that are coming for humanity. So right now we are at the beginning of these changes. And so I kind of want to do an overview about what are the things that we need to kind of integrate deeply in order to be able to hold space for these big truths that are coming out. One of the things that I saw, let me actually, so are you seeing me change my slides?
No, we can't see the slide change, no.
Yeah, okay, let's see. Oh, here we go. I can do it here. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So something first topic that I want to talk about is essentially talking about what contact is. And we kind of need to redirect our attention from the external to the internal. And the information that I'm going to share with you are things that are gonna be relevant and important for humanity after disclosure in a post-disclosure world, but also things that require a lot of internal cultivation and a rearrangement of our mind and the way that we see the world and the way that we see ourselves, especially. Because we are the center of the projections of the experiences that we're having. As was previously discussed, the nature of our reality, our perception of that has to change in order to better integrate massive new concepts of of who and what we are. The concept of being, interdimensional citizens and beings that exist in a world that are visited by other higher intelligence is not something that's new to our human race. This is something that we have been aware of since the beginning of time, and it's something that's encoded in our DNA. What we believe as contact as something external is actually an internal thing. And the sooner we understand this, the easier and the less fear humanity would be invited to experience as we go into the deeper understanding of these experiences. Now, there's several things that we kind of need to understand about the nature of reality in order to truly begin to cultivate an understanding, a peaceful understanding, a harmonious understanding of contact. The disclosure of non-human biologics, which is as it's stated in the congressional hearing recently, that they very clearly said that they did find non-human biologics, and they're going to find and disclose much more of this information. And I will talk about that, but the government has a very specific agenda as to how they're doing that and why they are doing it the way they are doing it, and it's something that I want to shed light on to prepare you to understand what are the implications of what that means for you directly. Advanced technology will cause a disruption of who and what we are. There are some things that we need to start understanding: physics, metaphysical model of this world, holographic nature of this world. We need to be able to understand that there are multiple dimensions that exist in our reality. There are also multiverses, and the travel in the way that we are navigating in these dimensional fields is through portal travel. We need to understand what is a portal, and essentially the connection between your physical body and that portal. Quantum non-locality, entanglement, zero-point energy, which is at the very core of understanding your own organic technology and the organic technology of co-creation of humanity. Psionics, humans' higher faculties. What does that? How do you develop that? What needs to be prepared in order for us to embody those higher faculties? And really, the higher faculties being the apparatus utilized in order to communicate and engage with this higher consciousness. Understanding the holographic nature of matter is absolutely essential to be able to understand that danger in the way that it's being presented by the government as something that is potentially dangerous to humanity is actually very much a psyops. It's a psychological manipulation of what is actually true. And if we understand the holographic nature of ourselves and of the world around us, it will very hopefully dispel that kind of fear and that the ignorance of how that actually functions. We also need to understand our multidimensional nature. Understand that we exist in multiple dimensions and that we are very much a one consciousness. We are a human race that is a one, and we are also unified with other species, and other higher intelligence beings are also an extension of our own self in some way. So that unified understanding of who we are is what will help ground us in an understanding of how to navigate contact. We need to try to understand consciousness, or at least how consciousness emerges from us as humans. We need to understand the morphogenetic field, as it is the instruction manual of form, which is important to dispelling fears about other organisms, other potential biologics that look different than us, how they manifest their form, how we manifest our form, and the intelligent order and function of that form in creating harmonious communication with these beings. We also need to understand our dream state, because the majority of these contact experiences are happening in dream state. Really, this is something that has been known for many generations, that the cultivation of our dream state is really the ability to navigate and walk in these multiple dimensional timelines. We also need to understand that time is not linear. It's a spherical model. I'll go into that in a little bit. But this is going to help us kind of move away from this idea that things are finite in this universe, and that our existence is finite, and dispel the potential fear of elimination of ourselves through any potential harm or shift that is coming in the world. And we need to understand how we participate in a field of consciousness, and our contribution, our responsibility, and our engagement in that field of consciousness. What does that mean, and how do we engage with that? Another extremely important element is to understand your bioelectrical nature of this construct. And the understanding of your bioelectrical nature is really at the foundation of advanced technology, because technology, higher advanced technology, as I will speak to later on in this presentation, is very much based on organic generation of our bioelectrical system, both our physical bodies being a vessel, but also higher advanced technology also mimicking and utilizing that kind of advanced technology. We also need to understand organic homeostasis, how to create homeostasis in our natural systems, our connection with the earth, and our connection internally in our physical body, because none of these higher faculty abilities and zero-point energy and advanced faculties can be cultivated without this homeostasis, the mastery of the homeostasis and emotional. We do need to kind of connect back with nature in a way that really helps us understand natural order, because the connection to nature is embedded the mechanistic secrets of this universe, and how organisms interact with one another in the laws of the universe, and in order to be able to transcend our limiting beliefs about duality, and that being part of this holographic nature. So there's a couple systems that we need to kind of begin to understand, and all of these things might seem very advanced and like entire fields of study, but in reality, all of these things are things that emerge in the stillness of our mind. A meditative practice and a deep reconnection to ourselves is where we find a deep understanding of all of these things. And all these contactees that have had experiences in my support group that I've been working with over the years, again, over and over again, continue to talk about how they have understood these very complex truths of the world and physics and science and consciousness as a result of these kinds of contact experiences, because we are entering into a higher octave of existence, into other dimensions in which a lot of this awareness is fundamental. So in order for us to begin to work on this level, humans have to prepare and expand their field of perception, the range of perception. We are multidimensional beings. We are bioelectrical frequency organisms that we function on ranges of frequency, how we see and perceive light, how we move light through our body. And that language is a universal language that will help unify us across the universe multidimensionally in order to interact with higher civilizations and even lower civilizations, even lower forms of life forms, in order to really understand discernment. But our apparatus of vision is beyond what we are seeing with our eyes. And that's part of the first step of the learning curve that we have to understand in terms of disclosure, that in order to really understand what we are looking at, what we're seeing, how we're perceiving, we're beginning to tap into ranges of frequencies that are beyond just our human vision. And this is something that is occurring as a result of the shift for humanity right now. We are entering into a higher octave collectively, which is activating expanding our range of vision. And that's why disclosure is absolutely imminent and will happen from the inside out, from the ground up. Humans are the ones that are being more aware of their interdimensionality. They're being aware of ETs and beings, and they're becoming aware of this interdimensional activity that is occurring in higher, in dream state, and also in the waking state. So as the veil lifts, we begin to understand that contact, ET contact, is very much a frequency thing. We're beginning to understand that we are tapping into ranges of frequency beyond the human vision. And many contactees that have had contact talk about direct contact with crafts, advanced beings, understand that the emotional connection is really, really interesting in that moment. A lot of times negative emotions are removed out of the space or shifted in a way to come into a more harmonious, neutral state in contact with these higher beings. And of course, there are parasitic beings as well that humans are interacting with. But again, this is very much part of resonance laws of the universe. We seem to experience and attract experiences based on our vibrational frequency. And contact is very much an individual thing. That's why there's a deep connection between the spiritual aspect of contact as well as the consciousness element of contact. But as we learn to master our frequency, we are kind of directing the kind of experiences that we're having. So experiences occur when humans are in resonance. In my personal experience, as a result of meditating 4 months, maybe 9 hours a day, I began to, this was the first time that I had completely conscious experience. And I was downloaded and shown massive amounts of information. And this allowed me to really open up into an entire different paradigm than where I was before. So there was an existential crisis for a moment, for a couple of years, really, to integrate really what it meant, that there really is intelligence and organisms outside of our construct that are highly, highly intelligent, highly, highly advanced, and that can help provide us with information based on our current evolutionary process. So, and from there, many, many other activities started to emerge once I was activated. The experience resulted in advanced psychic abilities, which allowed me to remote view, once again, recover my ability to remote view, recover my intuitive abilities, faculties, and navigate dream state in a very lucid manner. And also work with life force, how I'm directing life force through the body, how I'm interacting with other humans, and essentially learning how to heal our bodies and our minds. And this is something that is reported by so many contactees, that they have the ability to, they are activated in their psychic abilities in order to heal themselves and others. So this is a side effect of entering into a higher octave, into a higher dimensional plane, and it directly connects to our DNA and how our DNA is processing this information. So another element of that is that what we perceive as the beings, because, as a result of that experience, I saw many, many different species in many different experiences. But what I have come to understand is that the form in which they present themselves to us, it's not the form that is simply what is presented. There are many manifestations of that form beyond what is being presented. And that's something that we kind of need to understand. This is because the holographic nature of this universe, a lot of this advanced technology, biological technology, is a projection. And they do use memory from your subconscious mind in order to project the form of these beings. How do we construct the form of these beings? Like, let's say the grays, right? What we see as grays. Well, there is a collective overlay of information that we tap into, and the symbolisms that we have, held on to ancestrally, the memories of contact that we've held on to ancestrally, are passed down through generations. And this is something that is in the memory of our DNA. We tend to pull from that. We are also in our DNA holding family connections to ET species. So what is in our DNA is a plethora of different species from which we are essentially hybridized. These memories begin to become activated, and this is projected into the experiences that we're having. And this is very different from military abductions, in which there is a lot of psychological manipulation and also the inducing of certain imagery that is artificial. And it's quite different from organic contact experiences, higher dimensional contact experiences. I would say true contact experiences that are not interfered with or manipulated. And the difference is that higher dimensional contact experiences, the beings tend to abide by laws of the universe. You can kind of discern the difference there. The majority of traumatic experiences that humans experience are really, military interfered kind of experiences. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But when we are encountering beings of other star systems, they're not physical in the way that we want to understand, and neither are we. And people might hear me say this, and I say, what do you mean? We have crash retrievals and we have beings. Yes, they're going to be organic beings, but they're just as material and probably less than we are. Okay, and so our physical body, even when we touch something, remember that it's just a rejection of those atoms, the resistance between those atoms that are actually creating the sensation that we are touching something, that we are experiencing matter, a material substance that is solid. And we really need to understand that, because what we're dealing with here are organisms that are multidimensional, just like we are. And that's important because it will help us transcend this illusion that we have of attaching to an idea of a form, what it needs to look like, how it needs to be. And majority of humanity, when these experiencers in interviews, when they are interviewed about their experiences, they say that they're intimidated by the level of advanced biological technology, both in their organisms, because it's clear that their physicality is very different from us. And it kind of points to kind of what's organically directing them biologically, right? They're not really designed to eat. They're not really designed to procreate. They're organisms that exist with different purposes, different physical manifestations. And so the experience with them is that we can communicate telepathically, and they also have some sort of power over us. They can remove emotions, put emotions, change the way we feel. They can heal our body. They can communicate telepathically with us. They can transmit massive amounts of information, and it's instantaneous. A lot of the fear that people experience is because they're encountering these unknown realms of consciousness, this engagement with phenomena psychic phenomena, which we're not familiar with. Unfortunately, we're not familiar with it because we have been severely separated from that very innate, powerful technology, organic technology that the human has always had within them, which is their psychic faculties, their abilities to heal themselves, to communicate telepathically, to remote view, to channel information. All of those things are innate, and they are all embedded in our organism, deeply in our DNA. It just requires us to access that information, which is why a lot of contactees that do spend a lot of time in meditation, cultivating some of these things, do not experience such a severe trauma when they are encountering these beings. So when we begin to train our relationship with the unknown, this transition into this new world and this expanded vision will not be as difficult to integrate. So that's something that we need to understand for the future. But our vision that is expanding, our ability to perceive these seemingly outer worldly technology and beings and intelligence requires us to activate the higher faculties of our body. And it's key that we learn to develop the mechanisms of our brain, how we develop natural DMT in order to open the vision system to be able to navigate dream state in a very lucid manner. So all the ancient civilizations trained lucidity and dream state in order to navigate awareness of multidimensional travel. All the ancient star civilizations talked about how they were able to connect and to communicate with these star people, which allowed them to give them advanced understanding of nature, advanced understanding of the stars, of cosmology, astrology, healing, health, regeneration, energy systems of the body. And this internal reconnection, this internal apotheosis of a human, it's beginning to dissolve this kind of dormant state of hypnosis that we're in, and essentially learn how to truly create, how to truly co-create, rather than counter-creating. So as we are essentially expanding into these higher dimensions, we really begin to understand that the entire human race right now is going through an evolutionary process with the beginning of period 9, in which we are entering into an advanced frequency collectively. And what that means is that our DNA is expanding. When we expand the range of frequency in our vision through our sensory system, we have 5 main senses, but we also have hundreds of little micro senses in our body. Our entire organism is a sensory system. We are absorbing information from many dimensions simultaneously. We're just not aware of it. We don't understand that through our day, we're constantly moving in and out of dimensions. So this understanding is extremely important, because as we cultivate that awareness, we can kind of begin to understand, where we begin, where we end energetically, what we can master of that range. And the expansion of frequency collectively is helping, is not only the expansion of the senses, but if our senses are expanding, so is our DNA. So our DNA is activating, essentially. It is expanding in its range of processing information. And the more the human cultivates the conductivity in the body, the more they begin to activate the bioelectrical memory of this organism. And the transmutational power of the human, as it becomes more bioelectrical, it begins to discover that the human body is actually like a vessel. We function like a vessel. Our cells, the organic technology of our body essentially turns into this craft of navigation that we are utilizing multidimensionally. And so why this is important? Because the more we understand how we function and how we navigate, the more we're going to understand advanced technology without having to go through that curve of having to readjust our understanding of physics and science, because this is very much an organic technology that emerges from within us. And the technology that they are using is mimicking this natural order. So there's a difference between UFOs that are organic and the difference between UFOs that are human-made. And we kind of want to differentiate this because, because one is going to sneeze. We want to differentiate this because right now in this information age where we now have also AI introduced into this massive field of information, with multiple agendas running at the same time, people becoming very confused, and we feel that we don't know what is real anymore. We don't know what is true. We don't know what's the government and what are these real UFOs. But there is a distinction, and I would love to share it with you as an experiencer and as working in this field for a long time. technology that is truly advanced technology is advanced beyond our understanding. And I know this because I've been on multiple crafts myself. And I also interview and work with many of my experiencers in my group over the years that have, shared their experiences of this level of advanced technology. This technology overall is a technology that is organic. Okay, it is not at all just a cold piece of metal that is, simply like anti-gravitational or some kind of technology. It is absolutely organic in nature. It is a conscious technology. It knows when you are coming on board, and when you step into the craft, there's an acknowledgement telepathically to you and to the craft simultaneously. These crafts are also multidimensional. They can navigate in many dimensions, and they also can change shape and form. They're also quite sentient. They have some level of consciousness or some limited consciousness that engages with you somehow. It is also telepathic. It's telepathically navigated, and you can also telepathically communicate with the craft for navigation. For example, indicate where you want to be, and you are instantaneously taken to that place. In my experience, I was taken to the planet Maya in the Pleiadian constellation instantaneously, right? And again, our model of time will change. We'll talk about that. But also, it is connected to a field of consciousness, because the navigation of this craft is also engaging with the place in which we are headed, and we move beyond time and space. It's also seems to be working through a morphogenetic field, the morphogenetic field being simply a field of bioelectricity in which matter and form can change as it moves through this network of information. It's also genetically or organically connected to the pilot. So whoever is driving that craft, it is genetically connected to it. There is an element of DNA in which DNA is merged with the pilot. And what I have seen is that DNA is taken from the person and sequenced into the technology, into this kind of technology. And the merging of that allows telepathic navigation. It allows all kinds of connections and the facilities of traveling. It also uses 0 point technology, but the 0 point being that it's very much a vortex, a centripetal system of energy production, and it travels interdimensionally like this. Another element is that it's not made up of metallic pieces like an actual craft with nuts and bolts. It's very much one piece and simultaneous pieces that are created seemingly simultaneously to fit within each other. Also translucent substance that seems to be metallic, but it seems to be like more of a plasma system. And it's an atypical craft that is not designed to be necessarily aerodynamic, because it doesn't follow the laws of aerodynamic requirements. It's beyond that. Okay, so if you take into consideration this kind of technology and some of the things that we're seeing, as shown by the government, you can kind of identify in a way what is more organic and what is more, Earth, right? So man-made crafts are potentially using this anti-gravity. They just launched a new craft recently that is testing by the military. The recent wars that have occurred are utilizing a lot of advanced technology that is implementing robotics, remote viewing, anti-gravity, and different kinds of propulsion and energy uses, but nothing that is as advanced as these other technology. It is also quite metallic, using substances that are designed to be aerodynamic. It's not a conscious technology. It's not a telepathic technology, aside from a merging of artificial intelligence, which can seem like a telepathic communication, but in reality, it is still very primitive. in comparison. And it's also perhaps non-man directed. It is, they're using robots or AIs, or it's remote, navigated. And there's a lot of robotic integration in some of this technology. And the shapes are typical, even if they are, triangular or these kinds of shapes. Most of this advanced craft, they don't use angles in their technology, because it doesn't work in terms of the navigation following higher laws of physics. Higher laws of physics, we don't use like angles and corners. So that's one thing to mention. The reason why I want to mention this is because right now we are in the face of this government disclosure. And if you listen very closely to the agendas that have been expressed over the past few years, government seems to have a very specific agenda that is directed towards military, deployment of advanced technology, and their focus is security, supposedly. And the thing with that is that if they truly understand advanced civilizations, we don't really have anything to be afraid of. I mean, we've been in contact with these beings since the beginning of time. They are here on Earth. We are interacting with them. We are them, essentially. And the communication point is the human. So this is not something that we are needing to protect from or to fear. Most of this, technology that we do need to be concerned with, essentially, is what is going to be disclosed by the government, proposed to be alien technology, but it will not be. This is reverse engineered. This is information that I don't even call it reverse engineer, because a lot of this technology has existed for a long time. It's just been suppressed and hidden. But it will be applied now in a way that is used for control and, unfortunately, to gain power in very few circles. So this is something that we need to start to discern quickly, because as this conversation of ET is coming out, and with these new, whistleblowers that are coming out about this information, there will be a lot of confusion about whether you are safe or not in terms of ET contact. But in the higher laws of the universe. And I just want to mention, this is just a clip of the recent congressional hearing where he speaks that they did find non-human biologics. So we are really entering into a new age in which this agenda of the other species is being pushed. But we need to stick to what is true right now for us. And we can...
If you believe we have crashed craft,
Sorry.
stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
Did this special agent just...
Okay. So, so there's a couple things. And so as we begin to understand that there, of course, are other beings in this universe and what that means exactly, there's one way that we can try to learn to discern the difference between higher dimensional intelligence and lower dimensional intelligence. Through our government, military history, many of these UFOs and real advanced technologies have been shown to be around nuclear weapons, to disengage nuclear weapons, to disengage a lot of these wars and bombs that have been let off on the planet Earth, because these beings understand much higher natural laws of harmony, and they understand it because we are interconnected. We are so deeply interconnected with all these species that if we kill and if we eliminate and annihilate beings on this planet Earth, we are annihilating libraries of information, genetic information in the pool of collective consciousness. So this is something that we need to understand a little better, but higher dimensional beings do not interfere in a way that is harmful for humanity, neither in abductions or in a way that is harming a human. higher dimensional consciousness is through the user, through the person, through DNA, in order to recover memory of what they are, in order to heal the organism of the planet Earth. And there are certain laws of the universe that these higher dimensional beings follow. For example, the law of free will, which is very important for us to understand. The law of free will basically states that every human has the right to experience their own experience, to evolve at their own will when they are ready, how they are ready, in order to access the information they need for their personal evolution. And this is a law that higher dimensional beings follow and they respect. And there are hundreds and hundreds of stories that I can share of contactees that help us understand that in a very deep way. Oftentimes, experiencers that come to me that are extremely traumatized, after doing hypnotic regression, they begin to recover a deeper understanding of that experience, and the perception begins to change and evolve as they begin to expand their understanding. And this is very important for all humans to begin to access the subconscious mind to recover the true memory, because we don't realize how influenced we are, socially engineered, indoctrinated, influenced bioelectrically, biochemically, through technology, through media. Subconsciously, we are following asleep into an agenda of a belief that we are powerless, disconnected, ignorant, incapable of any kind of sovereignty or connection to higher wisdom. And all of this is deteriorating the human potential. There is another influx that we're experiencing right now that over the past couple weeks, I was shown that, the human race is splitting in two directions, one of an artificial intelligence transhumanist timeline and another of an organic timeline. And humanity will be put in situations where they're going to be afraid that if they don't go in the direction of the artificial intelligence, they will die, they will suffer, they will get sick, they will be, incarcerated or tortured, or there will be all kinds of scare tactics that will make humanity believe that they do not have the power of healing, of empowerment, higher intelligence. And so this is something that has to be dispelled in the conversation of disclosure, rather than being distracted with the political agenda, the militaristic agenda. When we look at advanced civilizations, what advanced civilizations are teaching us are a few things that I would love to invite you to consider. First of all, beings of advanced civilizations have deeply integrated feminine and masculine aspects. This allows them to understand the dualistic nature within themselves and within the external, not necessarily separating themselves from the whole. And that's essential for unity consciousness, a more elevated way of seeing things. They also have a higher cultivation of higher faculties. They have mastery over emotions, self-regulating the nervous system. And from the regulation of the nervous system, large amount of gray matter or highly conductive cortex or highly conductive organisms are a result. Their anatomy and the way that they function is different from us, but what is not different is that we are bioelectrical. Okay, so this entire universe is functioning on certain collective bioelectrical laws. And the more conductive we become, we can move into higher dimensions. We also take on different forms of the platonic solids, which allow us to enter into higher dimensional spaces. We also, as a result of the mastery of emotions and mind, and we begin to practice instant manifestation of thought. Our human race is headed in the direction of an advanced civilization at this time. So these are things that we're going to have to learn: telepathic communication, remote viewing and bilocating, instant interdimensional navigation through thought, advanced understanding of DNA memory recall, self-healing and regeneration technology, and in order to enter no longer entering into self-destructive or parasitic states of consciousness. Understanding the laws of the universe and free will, not interfering with other beings, respecting that. take severe accountability for creation. Creation is intentional, purely intentional. And it's not manipulative. It's not enhancing behavior. Essentially, this existence is driven by a natural order and collective harmony. That is what we have learned from advanced civilizations. The human race right now, it's maturing. It's based in separation. It's clinging to models of materialism as a reality. It's confused about the integration of identity and ego. It's embracing the infinite potential of human creation. And we need to learn how to take responsibility for our emotions as sort of collective experience. If we see wars in the world outside of us, right now we're moving to a higher octave in which all of the injustices, all the manipulations, the uneven exchanges of humanity is going to be painfully visible for humans to see and to understand. Because it needs to change. And the role of humanity is going to change. What I see in the future is as a result of potentially a fake UFO event that I believe that the government will attempt a couple, and they've already attempted it with the drones a little bit. But I believe there will be a couple of these that are going to be coming, and it will create a disruption. The purpose of that is to create disruption and to implement control systems, navigation control systems, airway control systems. But the bigger picture of that is that it will bring into conversation what we've been taught in school. So educational formats and systems will begin to dissolve. Science, the way we understand science, the way we understand physics, religious concepts, the way we perceive religion, the ideas of a God outside of us, higher power. What does that mean? What is the human if there is a higher power, if there are more intelligence races? So these are things that we are going to be experiencing little micro wars and changes between our societies, within our societies. The more we learn to not become polarized in any one of these social engineering agendas that are happening right now politically in the United States, for example, please understand this is a distraction to keep you away from what is extremely important right now, which is the cultivation of your higher faculties to be able to connect with this higher intelligence, and also to not be dependent on any kind of artificial form of enhancements, which is what will be provided as a solution to this jump in understanding of humanity. It is all in our DNA. Sorry, I'm going to speed up here. Essentially, we need to understand that time is spherical, and this is important to understanding the ET phenomena. Time is not linear, but we are existing simultaneously in a field, and our access to memories are very much encoded in our DNA, in our genetic history. Every ancient civilization on this planet, I just posted a couple of the examples of it, but there are hundreds and thousands of little ancient civilizations on this planet that have existed, that talk about how our DNA is storing the stories of our ancestors as we have merged with the stars. We are connected with the stars, and our interdimensional ancestry is encoded within our DNA. Essentially, we are the hybrids of these experiences. The morphogenetic field of consciousness is the instruction manual of form. So to understand that this human experience is just temporarily recovering the memories of what you are, to recover that memory is paramount through hypnotherapy, for example. Recover the memories of the lives that you've had in other, planetary systems. The children are being born with these memories already available to them. There are many waves of children that are talking about their past lives, their current lives, engaging with these advanced civilizations. And I guess one thing that what that internal work will help us do is understand that DNA really functions like a biological and bioelectrical genetic enhancement for the whole human race. When one human recovers their memory of what they are, of their true whole self, embodying this 0 point without becoming identified or attached to any one of these things, we literally are creating a ripple effect in the entire collective human race. This is where the healing emerges, and this is the true disclosure that has to happen from the ground up, as opposed to any kind of military agenda that will be proposed externally. Because the beginning of this enhancement is essentially something that will completely transform humanity into the better. The genetic enhancements are occurring through the sun. We have a lot of solar activity that is occurring, but we, in our plasma DNA, we are holding upgrades, you can say, or the expansion of this bioelectrical network of memory that is available in the body. And that is where we hold the record of all of our ancestral connections to these different star systems. The human body functions like a portal. Every single one of our chakra systems is essentially a portal into different planetary systems, solar systems, and every dream, every night, we are navigating in through there. So those of you that are beginning to have experiences, the invitation is to not come into a deep fear. The more psychic you are, historically, it has been shown by activities of the military that there is more interest in people that have developed psychic abilities. As a child, being in the GATE program and being in many psionic testing experiments as a child, when I recovered those memories, I began to understand the value that the human has when they cultivate these higher faculties. And unfortunately, it is parasited on by the military. But they understand that the gateway to contact is through the human body. It's through the apparatus of the human consciousness. So I also just really quickly want to mention that the hybridization program is actually the creation of soul. And it really doesn't have much to do with the sustainability of any one race that exists out there. When the human creates a soul, that soul can never be destroyed, but it is deeply interconnected in this web of consciousness. And we as the creator have 100% potential to navigate and direct how that soul is evolving. We can help aid it through our own evolution because we work as one collective consciousness. So I'm just going to leave that there for now.
Right.
How am I doing on time? Am I done?
Well, I just think, can you wrap up soon?
Yes.
But it's so fascinating. Of course, this should be like a college course, but yeah, just could you wrap up the next few minutes and then you come on the panel after the next guest and we can really break it down.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So sorry.
Thanks.
So really to close, I think the message that I want to leave you with today is essentially that there is nothing to fear in the disclosure. I think that the majority of our information, the vast information of which I just did kind of a super fast overview of, I access this information by the connection to the higher aspects of myself, higher faculties. My invitation is that we don't wait for any kind of government disclosure in order to have the permission to adjust our belief system and to adjust our relationship with the unknown and higher technology and higher consciousness. We need to take that power back into the hands because what will be disclosed is essentially a lot of fear mongering and a lot of directing us towards a very specific system of control into an artificial transhumanist agenda. And that is what will be proposed, since we don't know what is organic technology, we're going to look at this technology as something that will aid humanity. And yes, it will aid humanity in some ways, but we need to come back to natural order. And that is essentially what I would love to invite you to do.